and how our school is special. So to start with, when you join us at the Swan in September, you have to look forward to a really rigorous academic curriculum and excellent teaching. So we know that really good lessons are the things that help students enjoy school and also make the very best possible progress. So all of you will be doing really exciting subjects, some of which you won't have done in your primary schools, such as obviously your English, your maths and your science, but also other subjects such as music, French and design technology. Secondly, at the Swan School, we have high quality enrichment as an entitlement for all students. Now, what we mean by enrichment are essentially what you probably would have done in primary school as clubs. We call these electives, and that's the reason we have a slightly longer day to other schools. We finish our school every day at 4:35 on a Monday to Thursday, and on 2 of those days, we do things called electives. That is a little bit like an extra club that you do, but you do that with all of your classmates. So some of the things that we are doing at the moment with, or we're doing at the moment with our Year 7 students are things like Mandarin, creative writing, different sports, volunteering, and an environmental elective. There are loads of different things that you'll be able to choose to do when you join us, and we hope that you will all get involved in as many as possible. We have the highest expectations of student behaviour. The reason we have those expectations is because we know that by having a really clear and consistent expectations of behaviour, we can create a safe and happy environment for all of our students. And that very simply means that you're then able to learn to the very best of your ability and achieve more than you ever believed possible. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about that we think makes our school a little bit special is our unique family dining experience. Unlike at primary school and most other secondary schools where you might have brought a packed lunch to school, or at secondary school where you might go to a cafeteria, grab a sandwich and eat it at the playground, what we do is every single student and every single member of staff sits down together and eats a hot meal together in the middle of the day. That allows us to talk to each other, socialise and develop our conversation skills, but it also allows us to take responsibility for different roles and learn how to care for each other. So I'm now going to talk to you a little bit about something that I know that you're all keen to learn about, and that is what is happening with our building for this year. And I think that you should have received an email towards the end of last week giving you a little bit of an update on where we are. So as Mr. Higgs said at the start of this meeting, right now we are stood in our temporary buildings in Summertown, but I'm very delighted to confirm that in September we are on track to be moving into our brand new buildings further down Marston Ferry Road in Marston. So now from September, we will be having a partial occupancy of that building. So we will have almost half of the building where we will be having our lessons and our elective activities. And then in January of January of 2021, we will be taking possession of the whole building. And that will be a really fantastic milestone because that gives us all sorts of state-of-the-art facilities that are going to be really brilliant for your learning and the envy of other schools in the city, I am sure. So I just really wanted to kind of make sure that your minds are assured by that. We will be moving into our new buildings in September, and we are absolutely confident that we'll be able to provide our brilliant curriculum and get off to a flying start when you join back with us in September. The final thing I would like to remind you of before I hand back over to Mr. Higgs, who is going to talk to you a little bit more about what's happening in terms of transition and getting both our new students, our new signets, and you as families ready to join us, is our commitments to sustainable travel. As responsible members of our community, we really believe it's important to look after the environment and also create an environment that's really good for the people around us. With that in mind, we encourage as many students as possible to come to school by sustainable means. We encourage them to either walk or cycle if you live close enough, or to get the bus if you live slightly further away. We don't have any provision for parents at our new site to drop off their children on site. The one exception to that is in exceptional circumstances. For example, if children have a disability, which means that they're unable to walk or cycle, then we will allocate permits to families. If you believe you're in that position, please do get in contact with us and we will be able to review that and allocate you a parking permit. So I'm now going to hand back over to Mr. Higgs, who is going to talk to you a little bit more about next steps in terms of transition.
Thank you, Miss Wood. And just before I start on that, I just want to remind you something I mentioned at the start about the live text messaging service we have. If you have a question, please text this number and we will respond to some of the questions at the end of this event. So I'll just leave that there for a second if you haven't had chance to send it. And it's also on the top of every single slide as well as a reminder for you. Okay, so we'll move on to the transition update. So as you can all understand, obviously the current situation has made transition really challenging for us. We've had, and all schools have had to think of different ways of doing things this year to try and sort of bridge that gap. So to update you really, so far what's been happening is we've been contacting all the primary schools and gathering information about your children around their progress and how we can best support them when they join us in September. So that's been happening already. We've obviously got tonight's information evening, and you should have received the enrolment packs. You should have all had them posted home to you now. However, one thing just to mention about the homeschool agreement, we are aware that was an outdated homeschool agreement, so we are posting home a new updated version of that for you. Okay, so now I'm just going to outline basically what's coming up in the next few weeks and months. So the first next big event really is the enrolment interview. You can either select a virtual interview or an on-site interview this year. Basically, virtual interviews will be the same as this. They'll be via a Google Hangout with a member of staff. And on-site interviews there'll be strict social distancing measures in place, and we will be offering various on-site interviews. Now, there'll be a booking form and an enrolment form that will be emailed out to you on Friday this week. And what you need to do is firstly book your enrolment interview for your child, selecting whether you want a virtual one or an on-site one, and selecting your time. You will then receive confirmations of your booking and further details of how you access it. There'll also be the enrolment form, which is a really key form that you need to complete along with your child and get that completed before your interview. It's really important just to stress that you must complete that enrolment form, because that allows us to conduct the interview, and without that we wouldn't be held to, for them to take place. At the interview, we do like to take a picture of the student. One of the things we like to do at the Swan is between now and September is we like staff to try and learn all of the children's names and faces. So on the on-site interviews, we will take portrait pictures of the children, so we can do that. If it's a virtual interview, we'd really appreciate if you could send a portrait picture in beforehand to support us and our staff members learning names. Okay, moving on to uniform. Obviously, the uniform sizing event has had to be cancelled for this year, but you can still purchase and order uniform as normal. And uniform should be purchased through Price and Buckland. and should be purchased ideally before the 9th of August to guarantee a September delivery. We do recommend ordering early in case you have any issues with sizing and things. You can send it back in plenty of time. So just really to go over our uniform at the school. So it does need to be the exact version detailed on the school website and purchased from Price and Buckland. That includes the trousers or skirt, the shirts or the blouse, and the jumper or the cardigan. And they all have the Swan logo on them. The other items you'll need to get are formal shoes that are black and polishable, so no trainers will be allowed. It'll be formal shoes that are black and polishable. Your bag and coat needs to be plain, dark coloured, and have no large logos on it. And you need to also purchase the school PE kit, which again, information is in the handbook on the PE kit and also on the school website. Now, one thing we want to offer you in September is the opportunity to bring any items in on Wednesday, the 2nd of September, between 2 to 4 p.m. if you would like to check anything out. There's nothing that causes more anxiety than someone coming to school on the first day and finding out their bag or their shoes are incorrect. So if you're not sure, please, you can come and check out with us on Wednesday. Alternatively, you could also send us an email with a picture or a link of what you're looking to buy, and we'll happily check it out for you. Okay, moving on to induction days. So obviously, usually we would have an induction day where all the children come to the site, and obviously this year that won't be possible. So we will be changing it to a virtual induction process this year, which basically will be starting from Monday. You will receive a weekly communication from the school, which will include a themed video about one of our key areas of the school, for example, electives, family lunch, meet the tutor team, so you get to meet the teachers that will be here next year, accompanied by some optional tasks for you to complete when you're at primary school or at home with your family. So the first one this week will be a task on the school values and how you maybe have shown those school values currently in your lives so far. And there'll be one each week up until the end of this academic year. Okay, the last thing to mention is our matriculation week, which will be all new year 7s will have a week dedicated to learning about how to be a signet at the start of their first week in year 7. This week will focus on learning our values and our routines and really embedding them across the school. But apart from that, we also aim to build in that week a real strong sense of belonging and community amongst our students and staff. So for example, some of the additional things we do a tug of war event, a house ceremony, a singing performance, a sports afternoon, and a family garden party. Now, just to mention around the garden parties, it's going to be quite a special day. This is usually an event which would have happened in the summer, but actually will take place in September. So the plan will be on the Wednesday afternoon, you will come along and watch your child perform with all of their year group in our singing performance, and then everyone can hang around for a garden party and get to know each other and other families and all the students together. It's a real special event for us to highlight, and we'll obviously remind you of that close to the time. The last thing to just mention will be tutor groups. So usually we would allocate children's tutor groups before September. However, we really value the importance of being able to see the children interacting with one another, how they get on, what the sort of dynamics are like amongst them. And obviously, without being able to do that this year, we're really possibly concerned about putting them into tutor groups without seeing the children. So tutor groups will be allocated by the Wednesday of matriculation week. So we will use the first couple of days to get to know the children and then place them in what we feel is the best tutor groups possible. But that will include your children's preferences that you put down as well on your enrolment forms. Okay, we're now going to move on to the questions section of the evening. So we just need to adjust the set slightly. Thanks. So during this next part, Mr. McNaughton, our deputy head, is going to basically theme the questions that have been coming in and then pose the questions to one of us three to answer them.
Okay, so one here that has come a few times. I think you've already started to talk about, Mr. Higgs, which was when exactly will you place and how students in tutor groups, and their on-site interview, the enrolment interview, will that be with their form tutor?
Okay, so a quick one around the form tutor and the enrolment interviews. The enrolment interviews won't necessarily be with a form tutor, because obviously we wouldn't have placed them into their form groups. Also, some of the form tutors are new members of staff that are joining us in September. That will be with a small number of members of the current staff who are around and available to do those interviews at the time. In terms of how we'll place the children into tutor groups, we will try and design basically 4 really balanced groups in terms of gender, ability. We'll try and balance it out as much as possible while taking into account the students' sort of preferences and trying to make sure every child is with at least one person that they would prefer to be with from their primary school.
Okay, great. The questions are still flying in, by the way, which is why I'm not necessarily looking at Mr. Higgs. Sorry if that seems rude. A really quick factual answer to hear. Someone's asked how many students will be in each tutor group, which will be 30 in each tutor group. That's quite quick. This is an interesting one. I've got a couple here about lunch, so maybe we should go on to that. One of these is, as you only offer one option at lunchtime, what if a child won't eat it? Is there an alternative provided? And also, what if my child has a specific dietary requirement? How is that dealt with?
I'll take those questions. So specific dietary requirements, we ask you on the enrolment form to identify those, and we will then work with the caterers to accommodate that. It's absolutely not a problem for us to work around allergies and things like that. In terms of the choice at lunchtime, we do think it is really important for children to try different types of foods, and as far as possible, we encourage them all to eat the same lunch. That's really, really important. It's kind of a shared experience. And we do also make sure that the food provided is really kind of healthy, nutritious, but also tasty food, and food that we know that children will be able to eat. And there are different aspects. There are different aspects to the meal, so the children will always be able to eat something in the lunch. One thing to say is that if there are, linked to kind of the dietary requirements, if there are real specific issues around eating that have been ongoing for a while, have a conversation with us, and we will look to accommodate. But what we don't do is provide an alternative meal for different children every single day. We work with families who have identified there's an issue, and we look to accommodate and make sure we make reasonable adjustments for those children. But in the main, it is really important, just like at home where you have a family and there's one meal and you share in that. That's exactly the environment that we want to create here at the school, because quite simply, we know that it works well in that family setting that you have at home as well.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, let's go with this next one. So this is quite an interesting one. There's a few questions about kind of the current crisis we find. And, is there a contingency plan if the site isn't delivered?
Yeah, that's some really, really good questions there. So I suppose if we talk about the site to start with, we have been, really, really impressed by our developers who have managed to enforce social distancing and appropriate measures, but also managed to absolutely keep working through, which is why we can be so confident that we will be moving in September. The current position is that they are able to provide us a really good space, but they are also saying there's a possibility of them being able to give us even more, which would be brilliant. But yes, we do also, of course, have contingencies in the tiny chance that something else goes wrong and we're not able to move into the site. So there is very, very detailed planning for every single eventuality. And there is no chance that if schools are open in September, your child will not be able to join and start secondary school. So I want to just reassure you on that front. In terms of social distancing and what that looks like in September, I'm afraid I do have to be fairly vague, because at the moment we just don't know what the situation is going to be. And so it's difficult to make it's difficult for me to sit here and say this is exactly what we will be doing. At the moment, with our current provision and the children we have in school, we've reduced the number of children in classrooms, so we only have 12 per class for the children that are in, and we're able to social distance in that way. So as we get closer to the time and we know a little bit more about what the situation is and what the government guidance is for educators in September, we will work within that. Obviously, if we have to massively reduce class sizes in order to maintain that 2 metre social distance, we would need to look at what the timings of the school day were in order to allow a reduced number of children on site. But we would be in exactly the same position as any other school. Within that, we will have 10 teaching spaces. So we would have to reduce the number of children who are in school at any particular time, but that is exactly the same as any other school would have to do as well. When we know more, of course, we will communicate with you and reassure you and let you know what our plans are.
Thank you very much, Kay. These are really coming in thick and fast. I'm trying to sort through them and try and gather them together. One that I've had a couple of times, which again I think is quite an interesting one, is what is the situation / where can I get information about financial support with buying uniform if you're struggling with that?
Yeah, so during your enrolment interview, that will be outlined. Basically, there will be support for children for purchasing uniform through uniform vouchers who are eligible for that support. So not to worry, it will be sort of outlined to you in your enrolment interview. If you feel you qualify for support, then do sort of get in contact earlier, and we can start that process earlier.
Fantastic, Mr. Higgs. Okay, so one question I'm getting a few times is about how they will choose their electives, and also about exactly clarifying the finish time, because I think some people have got confused about whether electives are after school or during the school day. So maybe you could take that, Mr. Higgs.
Yeah, so I've just been recording a video about electives, which will be sent to you next week as well. So that'll explain a bit more. Basically, children will have 2 elective slots each week. They'll have an academic slot, which will take place on Monday, period 6. That's within the school day. And then they'll have a Wednesday academic slot, which is creative performance and community options. That next year runs period 5 and 6 one week and period 6 the other week. But again, it's inside the school day. In terms of how children choose, we have 3 cycles. So they will choose 3 times a year, and they'll have to choose 1 academic for one cycle, and then they'll choose 1 creative performance or community elective, and then they'll do that for one of the whole cycles in the school, and then they'll choose again. However, they can't choose the same thing twice within 1 year. They have to do different options. We want them to try lots of our electives. But again, that'll be in the video on Monday. You'll see that'll be explained again.
Fantastic, Mr. Higgs. Okay. A few people asking a little bit about the enrolment interview that will happen in the coming weeks and kind of what they can expect from that. What will that look like? What will they be asked about so they can feel a bit more comfortable?
I'll take that one. So enrolment interviews really kind of have 2 purposes. The first purpose is for us to find out a little bit more about you. So we ask you to fill in the enrolment form, and it's our way of just double checking that we have all the necessary information that we need about you, such as emergency contact details and all of those kind of things, and our opportunity to really have that face-to-face contact and start to get to know you, your child, but also you as a family. That's something we do for every single child, and it is a kind of a really important part of this process, but particularly for this year when we're not able to meet you in your primary schools and also on transition day. The second part of it is and probably the most important part is from your perspective as a new Swan family joining us. It's your opportunity to ask us anything that you need to know. So you will have been sent as well as the enrolment form, you will also been sent a family handbook. The family handbook tries to summarise all the important aspects of how we operate as a school. And what we ask families to do is read through that, discuss that together as a family before the interview, so that you can ask us any questions that you may have. We'd much rather have a conversation with you and be able to explain our rationale and go through things with you before you start in September, rather than ending up with a surprise where someone says to us, for example, oh, we didn't know we had to wear a uniform. It's about getting it all out there so that we can have a really open, informative and honest conversation. And then the final thing that we do during that time is really, as a school, there are some quite important things that we need to really just make sure that everyone is clear about. So it's our opportunity to really reinforce those. So some examples of that would be around the sustainable travel and us being able to have a conversation with you as a family about how your child is going to get to school and help and support you. If at the moment you think it's going to be driving, what other options might you have, and how we can go through that. So, not a huge amount that needs to be done in terms of preparation. The two really important things are to make sure the enrolment form is filled in. And then the second thing is around reading the family handbook and just having a sense of any questions that you would like to ask us about the school. But please don't be worried. It's absolutely not an interrogation. We're not, interviewing you in that sense, to find out whether you're allowed to join the school. Don't worry about that. It's just the kind of an information finding evening.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, next, a couple about staffing. So one person asked if we're fully staffed for next year, and another asked on a related note, will there be a head of year for this new year group?
So I'll take that one again. So yes, I am really pleased to say we are fully staffed. We were in a very fortunate position because obviously we knew our staffing requirements a long time in advance. So we managed to recruit all of our teaching staff really early back in February, and I can reassure you by saying all of these staff who are going to be joining us, both our teaching staff and our support staff, are absolutely exceptional members of the team, and we're really excited about them joining us in September. The second part of the question was, James, just remind me.
Will they have a head of year?
Will they have a head of year?
My name's Omar.
So they won't have a head of year per se, but what they will have is we do have a brilliant pastoral leader, Miss Mullen, who will be joining us, and she will be with Miss Wharton, our pastoral support champion, and Mr. Higgs, who's our assistant head, who kind of leads on pastoral aspects of the school. They will be responsible for looking after the children across both year groups. As the school grows, we will be having a house structure. So we will have heads of house and pastoral support champions who work with those heads of house, and they will be looking after kind of the student wellbeing side of the school.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. I'm just going to answer a few that are quite procedural because they're quite quick and I can just reel off the answers. One of these is, can children bring in their own snack for break time? We sell a range of healthy snacks on site, which does include some meat options such as chicken wraps. However, we do also allow, because we're aware of the financial implications of that, we allow students to bring in either a piece of fruit or a vegetable snack. However, we don't allow other food to be brought onto site because we really believe in the value of kind of healthy eating and everyone eating things that are going to help, nutrition. No nuts as well because of allergies. It's really, very important. Another question, will the library be available next year? Yes, we will have a library in the small part of the site that we occupy, which will then move when we occupy the full site into the full library. But yes, there'll be a fully operational library in September. And school governors, where can you find information for that? All the information about our school governors is on our website, so please do feel free. And a final one I'm just going to ask, I got asked about staff photos, because we're asking for student photos. Can they see photos of the staff? Again, on our school website, there's a meet the staff section, which has a bio and a photo of all our existing staff members. We'll look to add our new staff as soon as we can, so you can kind of get to know the team. Right, I'm going to pass over a little bit to Mr. Higgs now, because I've got a few questions about disciplinary processes. So wanting to know a bit about behaviour, how behaviour is managed at the Swan. And I've had a couple of specific questions about phones as well.
Fine. So again, the video you're receiving on Monday will go into this in quite a lot of detail around our behaviour and our systems within the school. So first thing to mention is, obviously, as Miss Wood's already mentioned, we have extremely high expectations at the school. And the way we create a really, really impeccable learning environment and a safe learning environment for all, for me, is sort of three key things that we do in the school. So firstly, the adult behaviour in the school is always really calm and consistent, kind and caring towards the children. The Swan School is not a school where children will be shouted at or told off in public or humiliated in front of their peers. Adults will always behave calmly. And I think modelling the behaviour you want to see is the first step in creating that environment. Secondly, we have really, really clear routines that happen every single day and in every single lesson, which make the expectations for the children really, really clear. For example, every time a teacher wants to get a class quiet, they say eyes, ears and track. And that happens in every lesson, every time a member of staff wants to get the children quiet. And that then allows all children to be successful because they know exactly what is expected of them. Other routines we have around sort of obviously our silent transitions, our lineups in the mornings, happen every day. And they really just create that consistent experience that allow children to be successful. And then thirdly, that is sort of underpinned by our behaviour system. Which first of all, the recognition part of that, our sort of recognition and rewards. Children can be awarded house points for showing the school values in lessons, for example, maybe putting their hand up and answering questions or working hard. And that goes towards house cups and house competitions. If they go above and beyond in a lesson in showing the school values or over a number of lessons, they will receive a sort of recognition postcard, which is emailed home and also presented to them in form time. That is then obviously the positive side of our system. We then have our sort of consequence system, which has sort of three parts. Firstly, there is our expectation detentions. These are lunchtime detentions that children receive for automatic things like forgetting a pen, turning up late to school, being late to class, not wearing the correct uniform. And that's our way of really setting really, really high standards across the school and reminding all children that, you know, it's important to be equipped, it's important to be on time, but also in the long run, that will mean teachers, when your child's in year 10 and 11, are not wasting time handing out loads of calculators or pens or being disrupted by lots of children being late to lessons because they've got those ingrained habits of high standards. And then we don't sort of, you know, we have zero tolerance on lesson disruption. We want all children to learn in a disruptive-free environment, and we want all teachers to be able to teach in a disruptive-free environment. So we do have a really clear system for in-lesson behaviour. So if children are causing any low-level disruption, for example, you know, talking in an activity that maybe you've been asked to do in silence, you'll be given a clear warning by the teacher. And if you're on a warning and you cause more disruption, you will be removed from the lesson, and that leads to some time in our reflection area where you have to reflect on what's happened, and you have a conversation with a member of the pastoral team to help you reflect for when you then return back to lessons. And finally, we have after-school detentions for any sort of minor incidents that happen maybe in the playground at breaks and lunch.
And I'll just kind of build on that as well. You know, we do have those really, really high expectations, but we are extremely clear and consistent, and we give the children every single possible chance to meet our expectations. So, for example, Ms. Higgs referred to matriculation week earlier on, which is the very first week that our new signets have with us. And the purpose of that week, as well as building our community, is making sure that the children are able to practice and that we're able to explain the rationale and the reasons behind all of our rules and expectations. We don't give any sanctions that week. We just allow the students to practice so that they absolutely know for the week after how they can meet our expectations and be successful. And during that week, and throughout, we always make sure that we explain the rationale and any reasons for our rules. So, for example, we do ask the children to be silent in the corridors. That's not just a rule and therefore they get detention if they break it. We make sure that we explain the reason we're silent in the corridors is so that we can ensure it's a safe environment and there are opportunities for disruption and bullying. We make sure that the children get quicker to their next lesson so they don't miss out on any valuable learning time. And thirdly, we make sure that we don't disturb any other learning that is continuing to take place during that lesson changeover. And we will have conversations like that with the children. We treat them almost like adults where we say, okay, here's the rule, but this is why it's really important. We never ever have a rule that says you do this because I tell you to. It is always explained and justified. And if we ever have a situation where we can't explain the rule or there doesn't appear to be a rationale for it, we take it away. I believe there was a question as well about mobile phones.
Phones, yeah.
Was it a specific question or was it just?
Just a couple of people said, what's your policy on smartphones? What's your policy on mobile phones?
Fine, it's fine. So we have no phones on the school site. The rule is they should not be seen nor heard during the school day at any point. If they are seen or heard during the school day, they will be confiscated until the end of the next sort of term, at the end of the half term you're coming up to. Now, I'm sure with some of that, there's probably sort of some safety concerns you might have. So if a phone does get confiscated, you will have the opportunity to loan a brick phone during that period of time for your child to have during to and from school in terms of being able to contact someone if they needed to. Children can go to the office in the day if they need to get in contact with you. You can obviously get in contact with the office if you need to get in contact with them. And you may have that sort of worry that maybe they just might forget, they might forget to turn it off or put it in their bag. We do offer the opportunity for it to be dropped off at the office in the mornings as well, and the office will keep the phone safe. And obviously we do that because we really value the importance of the sort of social interaction that the children will have during their social times, but also making sure that those sort of none of those negative side effects around social media come onto our school site.
And just to be absolutely clear, we do allow them, if you understand that many parents do want them to have a phone on the journey to and from school. When we say it's a phone-free site, we don't mean they're not allowed to have it for that journey. But what we ask them to do is to start to take responsibility for either turning it off fully and storing it inside their bag or dropping it into reception to us for safekeeping. It's that, if they are responsible enough to be able to have that mobile phone with them, we also believe they're responsible enough to look after it and take care and meet our rules and expectations.
Okay, fantastic. I'm just going to follow up on this last one from behaviour. I've had a question about, if we're holding very high standards and therefore we're giving quite a lot of detentions, worries about, is that going to mean that students miss lots of lessons? And how do we feel in terms of balance we're setting between being strict and and helping students?
I think we get the balance. We get the balance right. I think we struck a good balance. I think what's important is separating. Obviously, like if children are forgetting equipment, they're not going to miss any lessons. That is lunchtime detentions. Obviously, children will miss some lessons if they're removed from a lesson. Now, all children at some point during their schooling may end up with a couple of detentions or maybe being removed from a lesson. And want to say that is okay. That possibly it will happen, but we will always support and work with the child and the family to make sure that any sort of repeated patterns that crop up, we as a school look to support, provide interventions, provide sort of pastoral care to try and ensure that isn't a pattern that then goes on to sort of affect their education. I think it's really important to also think about the whole school picture, that we want to create the best environment for all children. And if we just looked at it from an individual perspective and we lowered standards, then lessons might become disrupted, people might not have their equipment, and then everyone's education gets affected. So I think it's really important just to remember those high standards really they benefit everyone. And I will sort of go into that in more detail in the video that I send out on Monday.
Brilliant. Okay, let's go down a different pathway now. I've had a couple of people asking a little bit more about electives. So one of them is saying, when will they know when the options are? Another idea is, another kind of strand is, will students have the opportunity to feed into ideas for electives or start their own clubs? And another point related to this, which I think maybe Kay will respond to, is, will students be allowed to leave early from school if they have other commitments outside school, such as a swimming club?
I'll take that one because I think it's a fairly short answer. So we do, as far as possible, we want all of our children to take part in our electives together. We want to make sure that, that's one of the ways that we build community, by working together in different environments and trying different things. So we do think that is a really important thing. So as far as possible, we want all of our students to stay in school for electives. However, we do recognise that there are some cases, for example, in the case of there being an elite sports club or an elite, music activity, where a child does need to leave school early on a particular day. What we have is an application form. So if you feel that your child meets that requirement, we ask you to send into us that request form, and then we will consider it and let you know whether that's approved, and we do that on a case-by-case basis. But just to emphasise the point that as far as possible, we want everyone to take part in our electives together, because we think it's a really good opportunity to build that community and participate as one whole student body.
Thanks. Right. I think I remember both questions. One was about knowing the options.
Yeah.
And one was about
will they have the opportunity to start their own clubs or feed into the elective programs?
So in terms of the elective options, so you can go onto the website now and find the electives area and see the current programme for the current Year 7. That will give you some insight to what's on the programme now. However, it will change next year. And we are currently working with external providers and our internal staff to build what that programme is going to look like. So the sort of your child will definitely know when they return in September what those options are. If the plan is finalised before then, in terms of we know exactly what the offer will be, we can email it out so your child can see it and start thinking about what they might like to do in advance. Children having ideas is definitely something we're really, really open to. I think the best way to raise this would be through the student council. So children will have people from their form who are student leaders, student council reps, and they'll hold meetings in their tutor groups, and they can raise ideas around things they want to change within the school. Giving ideas for options for elective would be one of those where they could do that. Alternatively, if they just want to come and have a conversation about an idea they have, then we're open obviously just to have those conversations within the sort of resources and budget and funding that we have.
Fantastic, thank you, Mr. Higgs. Okay, I was going to ask this one, Miss Wood. There's a question about, is there an opportunity for boys to wear shorts as part of the uniform?
No, there isn't. We have trousers or a skirt. And both genders are welcome to wear whichever they choose, but we don't have shorts as part of the uniform, and that I would usually find is common across all secondary schools.
Fantastic. And this one's quite interesting, Mr. Higgs. Is there an opportunity for some question and answer with the current Year 7s or some ambassadors from the current Year 7 before September to get some kind of student voice?
Yeah, so one of the sort of virtual induction sessions that I want to email out is about meeting the current student council, but they'll obviously be pre-recording videos for you to watch. So I guess the simplest way would be if you do have questions you want to know the answers to, if you email them in, I can get the student council to put that into their videos to respond to.
Fantastic. Okay, a couple of kind of, again, easier ones that I can just ping off here. Do we have a school librarian? Yes, we have a school librarian starting with us in September, part-time for year 1 and hopefully full-time in the future. What are the houses called? Well, one of our really exciting things we did this year was we had a process at the start of the year where our founding signets, our founding year 7s vote, and our whole community, staff and parents voted on our house names. So we have 4 houses. I'm going to have to try and get these right. So 7, well, Yusuf Sai, Malala, who is an inspirational lady who attends Oxford University or just graduated, maybe. Berners-Lee is the other house. Hawking, and the final one, Bannister, named after Roger Bannister. So these are all people who have some association with Oxford. We spent a lot of time educating the students about what they've done and why they're inspirational, and then they chose who would represent us. This one's probably for me as well. What support is given for any children identified as having special educational needs and possibly an education health care plan? Well, the first thing to say is we run specific bespoke literacy and numeracy catch-up programs in year 7. We put a lot of resources into that, and we think year 7 is the right year to do that so they can be successful throughout secondary school. So that starts with a phonics intervention group with our spectacularly good accelerated learning champions, or a small group maths intervention with one of our qualified maths teachers. That we think is really, really effective in targeting those students who need a little boost at the start of secondary school to get them up to that standard. We also have a pastoral support champion, Miss Walton, who does a lot of work on the social, emotional, mental health, and we have a range of interventions there in social, kind of from lunchtime clubs to mentoring to using different strategies to try to support students to manage their social and mental health to help their learning. And then on top of that, we obviously need to look at the individual needs of that student. We work with the SENCO, we think about strategies, we think about how we can help them as best we can with the resources we have. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that question. It's quite a big one.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would say is that we are very mindful of our students that have special educational needs, but also, are more vulnerable learners. And that's one of the reasons why we put so much time and effort into creating a really calm environment across the school, and why we focus so much on our carefully planned curriculum and our outstanding teaching and learning, because ultimately we know that those interventions do obviously take place and are kind of the cherry on top of the cake, but actually the most important thing in terms of children's progress is what happens in the classroom. And we know, for example, that children with special educational needs are even more affected by disruption to lessons than a kind of a regular child without special educational needs. So really making sure there is zero disruption to lessons, our lessons are always really calm, allows those students to really focus on what's happening in the lesson, and also allows our teachers to be able to individually support the children in their class, rather than spending their time managing behaviour or forcing children to get on with the work. Because we know that's happening as a matter of course, our teachers are then able to go around and support those children who need a little bit extra.
Okay, we're kind of approaching our last 5 minutes. It's important we kind of pull together some of the last questions and patterns. One question here, I think you probably answer quite quickly, Mr. Higgs. Are there clubs as well as electives? And if so, when do they happen?
So next year we will have extracurricular sports clubs that happen in the mornings, sort of 8:15 till 9 o'clock. And again, we're finalising what those clubs will be, but there'll be sports clubs. There's also an orchestra club on a Friday morning that will continue to run next year. There's also the opportunity to get involved next year in a music sort of scholars program that people will be invited to develop their skills. And there's also the drama production, what happens in the summer term. And again, that's another sort of extracurricular thing that children can opt to do. And sort of on that front, obviously being a small school, we want to build and develop that and grow that as we grow and we get more staff in and our facilities grow.
Thanks, Mr. Higgs. I'm sorry, I'm not going to get to absolutely all of these. We just had a brilliant one in. I think this is for you, Miss Wood. What ways do you have for parents and carers to contribute to the life of the school? What are your expectations of parental involvement?
Yeah, I suppose first thing to say, and I'll try and do this quite quickly, is that parental engagement we absolutely see as this being a two-way process, rather than us just kind of communicating outwards. We absolutely recognise the hugely important role that parents and carers and families play in children being successful. So we encourage a lot of interaction, but a few of the formal things that we have in place, we have SwanCom, which is our parent staff association for parents who kind of want to get involved quite actively in our school community. We also have something called Class List, which you will be invited to quite soon, which is a more informal opportunity to kind of interact and ask questions and kind of get to know other parents within our community. And the final thing to say on that is that Naomi Winifred, who is our brilliant parent governor, will also be doing one of these sessions that Mr. Higgs has talked about with another one of our parents to really talk about kind of how they interact with the school and kind of the best ways that they've found to engage with the school in a really, really positive way.
Really quick one here. Do you just drop into Breakfast Club, or do you have to sign up? No, it's absolutely drop in. There is free porridge for all, and that's provided absolutely free of charge. And everything else, there are bagels, cereal, sometimes muffins are cooked, pieces of fruit that they can buy using the cashless system that we use for everything else. Another quick one here. What if we sneeze or cough in the corridors? Well, of course, we have a common sense policy. We're not going to give you a detention for sneezing or coughing. However, if that's done in a kind of disruptive or way to intentionally distract it. Thank
Me. Okay, would you put your mute mic off?
Hello all, my name is Catherine Walton. I am Pastoral Support Champion. I think there are just a couple of technical difficulties that are being sorted at Miss Wood's end, and they are being sorted imminently, so apologies for this.
Somehow muted.
Apologies for that. Thank you for raising and making us aware of that, Catherine. I'll start again, but I've now completely lost my train of thought.
So the question was about, I've actually also lost my train of thought. Can year 7s and 8s sit together at lunch?
Yes. Apologies. I'll start again just because I'm not sure at what point we lost sound. So the intention is yes, absolutely. However, for the first part of next year, unfortunately, the dining space that we have available is not large enough for kind of 240 children plus 25 staff to be able to sit and eat together. So until January, we will be staggering our lunch times. So we will have one year group eating first and then having their playtime, and the other year group doing it in the opposite direction. From January, when we take our full possession of the site and we have our brand new dining hall, we will then have the year groups mixing together, and we absolutely want to encourage those interactions because we think our year 8 students will be absolutely fantastic role models and really good leaders for the younger children. We think there's a really beneficial kind of relationship both ways. So it's absolutely something that we want to encourage from January.
Fantastic. Okay, there's just 2 more that I'm going to address now. One, I think it's really important to just here. And the other one is a question about the recording of this and will it be shared. I have attempted to record it. It seems to be working. I did that maybe a minute or so into the presentation. So once I've explored the technicalities of getting that downloaded and uploaded, we will do our best to get that out to as many parents as possible. So just bear with us on that. That's definitely the intention. The last question I'm going to answer is what about trips? Which trips we run in Year 7. So I can start with that. We've tried really hard to have a big comprehensive offering of trips. Year 7 camp is something we offer. We're going to offer next year for Year 7 and 8 because the current Year 7's missed out on that camp this year. That's a big one we offer. I've done to the Central Museum, the Bodleian. We've done trips out to the Carol Service at Trinity College. Can you think of any other trips we've done? We've done several others, I'm sure.
There's also been lots of sports trips for fixtures.
Yeah, sports fixture events and competitions. And then we are planning, just thinking ahead a few years in terms of a ski trip for Year 8 and 9. So when your child's in Year 8. And again, it's one of those things where we will be growing and building on this year on year. There's lots of sort of plans for extra trips, Duke of Edinburgh, trips to France and things. But obviously that will all happen as we grow as a school.
Okay, great. I think that is the vast majority of the questions. I'm really sorry if I didn't get to yours. There may be a couple that haven't been specifically answered, but I think we did a pretty good job of getting through most of them there.
Great. So that's now the end of this evening's session. I suppose it just remains for me to say thank you very much for taking the time to attend and bearing with us with some of the slight technical difficulties that we've had this evening. It's been really great to start interacting with you and start to be able to kind of answer some of those questions that we have, that you have. We are so excited about meeting you all very soon and to have all of our new signets joining us in September. If there is anything that we can do in the meantime to provide information about the school or to support you with this process, please do let us know. We have tried to put together quite a comprehensive programme, and obviously that has all been sent out to you. But if there is more that we can do and more that we can do to support, we are here, and that is our main thing is to make you feel ready and as excited as we are for September starting. So thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.